Hello, my name is Bill. In this video I'll continue with my shelf tour. So, Lagrange 5 by Mack Reynolds. So this is 1979. Cover art, Bantam Books Incorporated. So they don't even want to tell you the artist name. So in the late 70s I would often go to the Wee Book Inn downtown. So they had 5 locations back in those days. Nowadays they only have 3. The downtown location is half the size it used to be. In the 80s they moved next door. Double Planet. John Gribbin and Marcus Chown. It will be a smash, says David Byrne. This is 1988. Then I have a few Samuel R. Delany books here. Fall of the Towers. So this is a 3-novel omnibus. Out of the Dead City, The Towers of Toron, and City of a Thousand Suns. So Out of the Dead City, it's 1963. Tower of Torrens was 1964. And I missed one here. Out of the Dead City, 1963. Tower of Torrens, 1964. City of a Thousand Suns, 1965. Cover art is Bantam Books again. Nova. (1968). Dhalgren. So I read this back in the 80s. So it's one of those novels that when you get to the end you still don't know what it's about. And then I give my copy to my cousin when we were out camping. So I just finished it on that camping trip. So recently, maybe 5 years ago, I picked up this copy to read it again. In 1974. So the biggest problem with rereading books like this that's a whole month's worth of reading. $879 pages. Well, maybe 3 weeks. Triton. (1976). Then I have some Ursula K. Guin books. The Wind's 12 Quarters. This is one book I had for 30 years or so before I got around to reading it. Probably just last year, or maybe the year before I read it. 1975. So it's a short story collection. So some of the stories are set in the Hainish Cycle series. So those are the ones I found most interesting. Whereas fantasy stories are not as interesting. The Dispossessed. (1974). So another book that I had for 30 or 40 years before I got around to reading it. So I read it a couple of years ago. The Left Hand of Darkness. So I'm sure it was in the 70s I picked this up and just read it a couple of years ago. (1969). So it says 12th Ace Printing, July 1976. Isaac Asimov's I, Robot to Protect by Mickey Zucker, Reichert. So these books by her are not as good as Isaac Asimov's books. It's like they're probably a young adult, but maybe Isaac Asimov was writing for a young audience as well, but they tend to have more advanced ideas for the time than these books. And also these ones don't quite fit in the timeline, Isaac Asimov's timeline, but he's not always consistent himself. And also the Susan Calvert character in these books is not quite the same as she is in the Isaac Asimov books. These ones, she's a medical doctor specializing in psychiatry. Whereas in Isaac Asimov books, I think he just talks about her being a robo-psychologist. So in this book, Susan Calvin it is, spends a lot of time with children with psychiatric problems. And she meets a robot in the library and doesn't realize he's a robot to start with. So I was reading these because of Sean D. Standfast doing his Isaac Asimov Future History project. But I never got as far as the second book in this trilogy. So I, Robot to Obey. The third book I wasn't able to find as a paperback. So I didn't get the third one. So this one is copyright 2011 by the estate of Isaac Asimov. And this one's 2013. And then here's my Agatha Christie collection. The Golden Ball and Other Stories. So there's various copyright dates from 1924 to 1934. And then 1971 by Christie Copyrights Trust. Then the Regatta Mystery and Other Stories. So this is copyright in 1932, various dates up to 1939, then copyright renewed from 59 to 67. So about 2018 I stopped in at the Wee Book Inn downtown and bought all the Agatha Christie books, pocket books, mass market paperbacks that they had that was in good shape. So you can see with their stamp here, there's only 3 locations compared to 5 in the other stamp. Sad Cypress. So this is a Hercule Poirot book. I wrote them on the price tag when I got them. I looked them up. That's Hercule Poirot 22 in the series. Dead Man's Folly. Hercule Poirot novel. This one was 1939. Dead Man's Folly. Was 1956. And the Clocks. Another Hercule Poirot. (1963). Cards on the Table. So I just read this one last year. It's 1936. Hercule Poirot is invited to a dinner party. So it's 4 detectives and 4 murderers invited to the supper party. And after supper, they're playing cards. So the 4 detectives in one room and the 4 murderers in the other room. And so I guess during bridge, some players sit out. So when they're not playing, they're wandering around. So sometime during the card playing, the host is murdered. So the rest of the book is the 4 detectives trying to figure out which one of the 4 murderers murdered again. Of course, their previous murders were just suspected. They weren't actually proven. So in the end, Hercule Poirot figures out who the murderer is. And the other detectives get it all wrong. $4.50 from Paddington. So this is a Miss Marple book. (1957). So there's a whole list of Agatha Christie books to read. And I haven't read very many, maybe half a dozen, but she's not interesting enough to pay full price for the books, so I'll only get more if I get them. very cheap. By the Pricking of My Thums. This is a Tommy and Tuppence book. 1968. The Murder on the Orient Express. So, it's the only book I found at Book Outlet of hers that was called a mass market paperback, but it's not really a mass market paperback, it's too tall. So that's why Agatha Christie's got the top shelf on this other cart here. So it's 1934. And it's got the cover from the movie. It's got screenshots from the movie inside. So I would have preferred a cover more like this. The playlist today was Jacob Mix, so post-rock. So that's all for this video. See you in the next one.